Dvaya Koro Sita Pati Advaita Gosha Tava Kripa Bole Pai Chaitanya Nita Tava Kripa Bole Pai Chaitanya Nita Haha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Haha Swarup Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Bhata Juga Shrideva Prabhu Lokanatha Bhata Juga Shrideva Prabhu Lokanatha Daya Koro Shiacharya Prabhu Srinivasa Daya Koro Shiacharya Prabhu Srinivasa Ramachandra Sanghamage Narottama Dasa Ramachandra Sanghamage Narottama Dasa Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Koro More Toma Bina Kedoyalu Jagatam Sare Jayam Vishnupad Brahmhang Suvarvidakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shiman His Divine Grace Kalesi Bhaktivedanta Smaraj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Haribol Glories to these sound devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Agyanatavarandasya Gananjana Stalakaya Chaksuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vrajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Drubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda So reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, Chapter 4, the confidential reasons for the Lord's appearance, and text 72 is on the board. We'll just read it a couple of times, because otherwise we won't have a class. What time is the class supposed to end? 9 o'clock. Okay. Ananda Chimaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabiri Eva Nija Rupataya Kalabi Kalok Eva Nivisatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamahan Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis Tabiri Eva Nija Rupataya Kalabi Golok Eva Nivisatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Translation, no purports. That's what I'm going to read a number of verses because there's no purports to most of them. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm, Goloka with Radha, resembles his own spiritual figure, and who embodies the ecstatic potency, Ladini. Their companions are her confidants, who embodied extensions of her bodily form and are imbued and permeated with every ever blissful spiritual rasa. Sounds good. This text is from the Brahma Samhita 537. So I'm just going to read these texts one after another until we get to someone with a purport. Now please listen to how Lord Krishna's consorts help him taste rasa and how they help him in his pastimes. The beloved consorts of Lord Krishna are of three kinds: goddesses of fortune, queens, and the milkmaids of Raja, who are the foremost of all. These consorts all proceed from Radhika. Just as the fountainhead, Lord Krishna, is the cause of all incarnations, so Sri Radha is the cause of all these consorts. The goddesses of fortune are partial manifestations, Srimati Radhika, and the queens are reflections of her image. The goddesses of fortune are plenary portions, and they display the forms of Vaibhava Vilasa. The queens are the nature of her Vaibhava Prakasha. The Raja Devis have diverse bodily features. They are expansions, and they are instruments for expanding rasa. Without many consorts, there is not much exaltation in rasa. Therefore, there are many manifestations of Srimati Radharani to assist in the Lord's pastimes. Among them are various groups of consorts in Braja who have varieties of sentiments and mellows. They help Lord Krishna taste all the sweetness of the rasa dance and other pastimes. Now we come to a purport. As already explained, Krishna and Radha are one and two. They're identical. Krishna expands himself in multi-incarnations and plenary portions, like the Purushas. Similarly, Srimati Radharani expands herself in multiple forms as the goddesses of fortune, the queens and the damsels of Braja. Such expansions from Srimati Radharani are all her plenary portions. All these womanly forms of Krishna are expansions corresponding to his plenary expansions of Vishnu forms. These expansions have been compared to reflected forms of the original form. There is no difference between the original form and the reflected forms. The female reflections of Krishna's plenary pleasure potency are as good as Krishna himself. The plenary expansions of Krishna's personality are called Vaibhava Vilasa and Vaibhava Prakasha, and Radha's expansions are similarly described. The goddesses of fortune are her Vaibhava Prakash forms, and the queens are her Vaibhava Prakash forms. The personal associates of Radharani, the damsels of Braja, are direct expansions of her body. As expansions of her personal form and transcendental disposition, they are agents of different reciprocations of love in the pastimes of Lord Krishna under the supreme direction of Srimati Radharani. The transcendental realm enjoyment is fully relished in variety. The exuberance of transcendental mellows is increased by the association of a large number of personalities similar to Srimati Radharani, who are also known as gopis or sakis. The variety of innumerable mistresses is a source of relish for Sri Krishna, and therefore these expansions of Srimati Radharani are necessary for enhancing the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna. The transcendental exchanges of love are the super excellent affairs of the pastimes in Vrindavan. By these expansions of Srimati Radharani's personal body, she helps Lord Krishna taste the rasa dance and other similar activities. Srimati Radharani, being the central petal of the Rasa Lila flower, is also known by the names found in the following verses. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desatarane. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desatarane. I think on my desk, there's a yellow pillbox. It has 4 different things on it. Yeah, it's yellow. It has 4 different small containers in it. Here it mentions about Vaibhava Prakash and Vaibhava Vilas, which for most of us doesn't mean anything. Matter of fact, most of this purport, I'm sure for most of us, is quite theoretical. when we talk about rasa, the expansions of Srimati Radharani, and even when we hear the words that the queens are reflections, we may get the wrong idea. As a matter of fact, most of the purport, I'm sure we get the wrong idea. Because we can only understand something that we experience. Otherwise, it just remains theoretical. And when things remain theoretical, the example is licking on the bottle of a jar of honey rather than tasting it. Generally speaking, Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually meant for those who are liberated souls. Even Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to bring us to the platform of liberation from our material conception of life. Although we have nothing at all to do with the material existence, other than that we're attached to it, and that we're dreaming that we're part of it, and therefore we're not experiencing our actual existence, we're experiencing the actual reflection of our real existence. We take it very seriously. But when we hear about the actual reality, we may have little or no experience of what that actually means. And therefore, it's just like, it's a theory. Sometimes some of our devotees, they like to give lectures and talk about Krishna's pastimes. And this is generally appreciated more than if someone gives a philosophical talk. As a matter of fact, if we compare it to the amount of time devotees listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, compare it to their other activities, I doubt whether they listen to Prabhupada's lectures very often or very consistently. That's because we're imagining that we can taste rasa without being qualified. This is called sahaja. And it may be presented in a very dramatic way because we all like to be entertained. As a matter of fact, that's why we came to the material world. That's why we go to any world, is to be entertained. And therefore, when we hear about spiritual life, we like to be entertained. But subtly, it's imaginary. And when we hear about Krishna and Srimati Radharani, their pastimes, the tendency is to actually think that I'm Radha or I'm Krishna. And that I'm enjoying that way, subtly. And even when we hear about great devotees, their pastimes, then we put ourselves in the hero position. That we're actually elevated, that we have these qualities somehow or another subtly, that's being talked about. But this is not the way of advancing spiritually very quickly, if at all. But there is a method of advancing, and that's called the Sankirtan movement. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. That Srimati Radharani, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is a combined form of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. And to get to Srimati Radharani and Krishna, their pastimes of Vrindavan, there is an actual process. And if we follow the process, we'll actually get there. If we don't follow the process, then we'll get somewhere else. And that process begins with serving the current representatives of the disciple succession. Thank you. Now the question is, who is the representatives of disciple succession? Just to make it short, Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Avajananti mamuda manushim tanum ashrityam param bhavam ajanato mama bhuta maheshwaram. The fools, they deride at my descending in this human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. So who are those forms? Who are those fools? Well, we're probably amongst the fools. Because when Krishna uses the word mudha, he also says, Ukramantam stitim vapi, bunjana vagunanvita, vimudananda pashanti pashanti jnana chakshusha. The foolish, they cannot understand how the living entity quits his body or what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But those whose eyes are trained with knowledge can see all this clearly. So anyone who's in the Bali concept of life is a fool. Now, we're just trying to, our education in Krishna consciousness is first of all to recognize that we're fools. If we don't recognize we're fools, then we're the biggest fools. We join the mudhas in the world. At least we should be mudhas, I should say. But at least we should just be fools, that's all. Regular, ordinary fools, trying to become learned. And until we actually realize Krishna, then to different degrees we're fools. If we don't understand we're this body, we're fools. If we don't understand Paramatma, how to take shelter of him, then we're bigger fools. And if we don't understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we're all fool number ones. Therefore, our first business is to find out what is the process of getting out of our Bali identification and coming to the platform of actually taking shelter of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and Paramatma within the heart, and then surrendering to Krishna in love and devotion. But because we don't know Krishna, we assume he's something like us. We may not admit it because we're all card-carrying Hare Krishnas. Of course, they don't even give us cards anymore. We don't even carry a card. But we assume we're devotees. Prabhupada used to say, at the beginning when I joined the movement, all the ladies were all gopis. And all the men were Prabhus. Now, gopi is certainly higher than a Prabhu. That didn't last so long, but anyhow. And then Prabhupada would always say, we call ourselves Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. But these terms are rather, terms of encouragement, actually. We're aspiring to become Vaishnavas, and we're aspiring to become Vaishnavis. We're aspiring to become devotees. I mean, how much are we actually devoted to Krishna? To some degree we are. And therefore Krishna says, if we don't know Krishna is God, Mogaisha Moga Karmano, Moga Jnana Vicheta Saha, Rakshasim Asrim Chaiva, Prakriti Mohinim Shitaha. Then our hopes for liberation, our fruit of activities, and our cultivation of knowledge is all fruitful. So that means if we're doing some service, and when the goal is not Krishna, if we're cultivating knowledge, reading these books, and we don't realize the goal is Krishna, and we're doing some meditation and Krishna is not included, then what we're doing is a waste of time. Therefore, Krishna says, Daivi Mahatmana Sumam Bharata, Daivi Prakriti Mashitya, Bhajana Manaso, Gyatva Bhutadim Avyam. That those who are actually great souls, Mahatmanas Tumam Bharata, who are under the internal energy of Krishna, they're engaged in my devotional service. Mahatmanas Tumam Bharata, Daivim Prakritim Ashritya. They've taken shelter of the Daivi Prakriti, of the internal energy. Bhajana Manaso. And they're always engaged in serving me, in worshiping me. Bhutadim Avyam, perpetually. So what are we doing here? What is this all about? Sadadam Kirti Antoma. At the beginning, we're just trying to chant Hare Krishna. And trying to do it as consistently as possible. And when we do that consistently as possible, we become a regulated sadhana, and we actually start understanding the value of becoming conscious of Krishna, then the next step is there. So for those who are neophytes, who are trying to get out of trying to have a happy time in the material world and get out of its miseries, or trying to advance towards liberation, then when we finally come to the idea that I should actually take to the process that will bring me to Krishna consciousness, then Sadatam Kirtayantam Yatantas Chadrida Vrataha. Then we take a vow. That's called initiation. Initiation is not just throwing grains into the fire. Initiation means become determined that in this lifetime I'm going to make progress towards Krishna consciousness, to surrendering to Krishna. To give out my false ego, I'm now accepting a different ego, that I'm the servant of Krishna. If we don't accept another ego, that I'm Krishna's servant, and be willing to be trained and make progress in actually giving up our false ego completely and being trained to become a consistent servant of Krishna, then it doesn't matter how many initiations you take, nothing's going to happen. Because that's the initiation. That's what it's all meant for. And then namasyantasmam bhaktya nityukta upastate. So the Madhyama Adhikari, he's meant to take initiation. The neophyte can take initiation because he's chanting, but that's first initiation. He makes a vow to chant a certain number of rounds a day. But the actual initiation is when we actually prepare to give up our false ego. It's supposed to be, could be first initiation, could be Brahminical initiation. And we're prepared to become 24 hours a day, at least take to a process by which we can become eventually absorbed 24 hours a day in service to Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. And if we take to that process, not only is we're working on the Madhyama Adhikari platform, which is what initiation is supposed to introduce us to do. In fact, our whole movement is meant for that, coming to that platform. Then when we see Krishna, it's simply out of love. Then we don't go, my dear Lord, give me a house, give me a wife, give me a color TV, Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. Then we're not looking at Krishna as, Big Daddy who's come here to give us Christmas presents or presents on Janmashtami, whatever. No, we do it out of love, for prema, that our objective is prema. And when we see the devotees, our objective is cooperation. Ishvarat adineshu palisheshu dvitsatsu cha prema maitri. Maitri means friendship. So our aim is to make friends with the devotees, not to look at the devotees, this devotee stole my glove 3 years ago and I've never forgiven them. I'm going to get even one day when it's... Well, that's just one example, because in relation to each other, the material, we're in Kali Yuga, because of our false egos, there's always some friction. There's we're covered with all these conceptions of life, and therefore naturally, part of the conceptions is that we have animosity towards others, or envy towards others. Therefore, there has to be an art of making friendship with the devotees. Real friendship. Real friendship is not just, we share the same, we steal prasadam together or something. Real friendship is that you can walk side by side with a devotee, and you're confident that you can reveal your mind to the devotee in terms of the devotee will help you advance in devotional service and help you with your service. And they won't reveal, whatever you tell them won't be on Facebook the next day for 3 million people to hear about. And you can get good advice from them, and you can give them good advice. That's called friendship. You're cooperating to serve the Sankirtan movement, to serve your personal advancement in Krishna consciousness. And you have confidence that this person is my well-wisher. They actually they're favorable towards my Krishna consciousness, towards my advancement. It's not a competition. Material world means there's always that element of competition, but people are equal, that I want to become better than they are. Matter of fact, the religions that fight the most are the religions that have the people in the same religion. They don't bother with the other people because they think they're going to hell. I don't have to bother with them. But with each other, they fight like cats and dogs. Who's actually the most pious? Who's going back to Godhead? Whatever. And Namasyantasvamam Bhaktya. So Maitri, and then for the innocent, there is Kripa. For the Bali Shushu, those who are like children, there's Kripa, and Dvisatsu Cha, for those who are envious of Krishna, Dvisatsu. Then there's Upeksha. So this is the platform that we work on, but we can't do it. Well, we have to recognize that our aim, we can only do this in the association of devotees. It may be a temple, we may be living in the temple, we may have our home life, but unless we recognize my wife is a devotee, my children are potential devotees, then we're not going anywhere. It's very difficult to make our minds devotees by ourselves. We can chant and listen to ourselves, but we're always listening to ourselves. But to chant and listen to someone else and have appreciation for them, that they're devotees of Krishna, then you're a devotee. Otherwise, we listen to ourselves and we think we're chanting, because we're an illusion. We don't understand this. We're not doing anything except for agreeing to serve our spiritual authorities. It's that decision to serve the higher authority that helps us advance. Their instructions, not just serve, just do whatever we're doing, but actually develop the proper mentality, the mood, the consciousness. That's also a very essential part of service. The proper attitude. Then the result is, if we participate in the Sankirtan movement, trying to spread Krishna consciousness, trying to see that that's what I'm doing. Whatever I'm doing under authority to spread Krishna consciousness. It's not that I just do things because they tell me to do it. That's all right. We won't advance very much by eternally doing something like that. But to develop a vision that this is what Krishna appointed me to do through his representatives, and I'm doing it to please him, whatever it might be, then we'll actually remember Krishna, and that's called Krishna consciousness. And if we're Krishna conscious, to the degree we are, we're making advancement. If not, hopefully we're making advancement so we can come to that platform of accepting that this world is meant for us right now. The importance of the world is not all the different energies, earth, water, fire, air, and their different combinations and arrangements. That's illusion to think that these arrangements are important. We hear in the Bhagavad Gita that Jnana Vijnana Chiptatma Kutastra Vijitendriya Yoga Yukta Lostrama. Let's start over again. Jnana Vijnana Chiptatma Kutastra Vijitendriya Yukta Samalosrasma Kankshanaha. That a person is said to be absorbed in knowledge and realize knowledge when he begins to see that everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, are the same. Because why? It's the material energy. It's just different combinations of different energies of Krishna, manifested in different forms, which are not real forms. They're always coming and going. They have no substance, real substance to it. They're real, but they're just temporary. And to take the temporary material world is important and forget about the soul, ourselves, and the other souls, it's called illusion. That's the primary illusion we're under right now. Therefore, we have to take seriously the soul and the souls, with how they should be engaged in doing something to please Krishna. That this world is simply an opportunity to utilize things in Krishna's service. whatever energies we may be given to us. Then the next thing is to serve under authority, that I'm not the supreme, to develop the service attitude. Initiation is primarily to develop a service attitude. If we're not developing a service attitude, then the initiation has no meaning to it. And if we're developing a service attitude only towards the person who gave me initiation, then we have no idea what we're doing. First of all, he's just a servant of his spiritual master, of the whole disciple succession. We're becoming servants of the disciple succession. And all the members of the disciple succession, they're part of the disciple succession because they've learned how to serve the representative of the disciple succession, and through them serve everyone. Our acharyas are the ones who know how to serve everyone, all living entities. So if we're living our service attitudes towards our initiating spiritual master, then we're simply on the material platform. We're kanishta adhikaris, higher or lower, usually impersonalists or materialists. So it's kanishta adhikaris. So unless we actually, through our spiritual master, learn how to become a servant of everyone we meet, Yari Deka Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh Amara Aga Guruhana Taridesh. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told as a primary duty that we have, whoever we see, whoever we meet, how to help them advance in spiritual life. That's what being a servant of the spiritual master means. Not just to throw him some flowers or give him some dakshin whenever you see him. That's nice, but that's not very deep. And that's not the purpose of initiation. Then, namasyantasmam bhaktiya. Then, if we follow that process, then we'll actually spontaneously think about Krishna. And when we realize how wonderful Krishna is, how beautiful Krishna is, how wonderful Krishna's devotees are, how wonderful all living entities actually are potentially, how wonderful Krishna's energies are, then we'll become very humble and loving. One cannot actually become humble unless one simultaneously becomes loving, and one cannot become loving unless one becomes humble. Srimati Radharani, Krishna, everyone in the spiritual world, they're unlimitedly humble and unlimitedly loving. They go hand in hand. But unless we take to the process of hearing about Krishna regularly, chanting about Krishna regularly, developing a service attitude, and then surrendering to accepting the fact that I'm Krishna's servant, and be willing to cultivate that service to Krishna for the rest of my existence. And unless we come to the platform of actually experiencing Krishna through the process of surrendering, unless we understand the process and we're actually trying to make advance in that process, then we can come back life after life, and hopefully there'll be some prasadam for us. So there'll be some compensation. But there's prasadam in the spiritual world also, so you don't have to worry. And you have better digestion there too, so you can eat more of it. So I think, any questions or comments? Yes. Do we have a microphone? So the point is, hearing about these pastimes of Radha and Krishna, they're nice, and in fact we have Radha and Krishna here, but they'll reveal themselves as much as we participate in the Sankirtan movement. This is their service they're giving us. Srila Prabhupada once wrote to me, he said, the more you work seriously to help bring Krishna's other children back to the spiritual kingdom, the more he'll bestow all of his blessings upon you. That Krishna is never ungrateful for our efforts to serve him, rest assured. So they've come as Sri Krishna Chaitanya and the Panchatattva. They've expanded themselves as our acharyas. The acharyas expanded themselves as this movement. Srila Prabhupada has expanded himself as everyone who's participating in this movement has some empowerment by Srila Prabhupada and by the previous acharyas. So we live in the association of devotees under the guidance of the previous acharyas, our previous acharya, Srila Prabhupada especially, the founder acharya. And we serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And by doing that, then we automatically serve by serving by the 6 Goswamis, then we serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Panchatattva. Automatically, spontaneously, we'll be in the spiritual world with Radha and Krishna. And these deities, one day they'll even talk to us. Srila Prabhupada was talking to us too. He's talking to us through his books already and through his representatives. So we have to have some confidence that if we serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and try to understand it and take it seriously, then all perfection will be there. Any questions?
Yes. I was thinking, you were saying how Srila Prabhupada says, we should finish our business in this one lifetime. Sometimes I think, there's just so many books, so much information, so much progress. Sometimes it feels like, how is it possible to do it all in one lifetime? It seems like a Herculean task, and so many things that we're not yet qualified for, and so many things to purify. And how do we? It seems like, I'm amazed at Srila Prabhupada's confidence in us, or maybe not in us, but in the mercy of.
Well, as Prabhupada encourages like that, we'd be here till the end of Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
So one side he was trying to be encouraging, the other side he was realistic also. Or as he says in the purport in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 72, one could become Krishna conscious in a moment or not after millions of years. It's only a question of understanding and accepting the fact. So everything we have, all these books, all this whatever, it's all very simple actually. It's all the same thing. It's just repeated. Every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is just about devotional service and Krishna consciousness, everything we're doing. But it's a question of understanding and accepting it, that's all. As far as being impatient, this is the spiritual world. If we're in devotional service and the kingdom of God are not different. So we shouldn't be so anxious to go back to the spiritual world. We should be anxious to be in the spiritual world right now through devotional service. That we should be anxious for. And I'm going to take what I'm doing seriously. So I'm actually in the spiritual world right now. Then we'll become qualified eventually to not only be in the spiritual world here, but then, whether we go back to the spiritual world or not, that's up to Krishna. Or as Prahlādānanda Maharaj said, Naiva dvije paradratya vaitaranyas tvavirya gaina mahamrita magni chitak soche vimukha chetasa indriyarata maya sukhayam bharam udvato vimudam. My dear Lord, you're asking me you're willing to give me so many benedictions, but I don't want any benediction. I don't need any benediction. Because whenever I chant your holy name, I immediately merge into an ocean of transcendental bliss. And I'm completely happy and satisfied by that. But I'm lamenting to see these poor fools who are working hard for nothing, who are vimudhas. And I'm compassionate to them, and I'm trying to work on your behalf to help them develop their relation with you. So we shouldn't be anxious to go back to the spiritual world, because we should be anxious to be in the spiritual world right now. Anything else? Thank you very much. Krantaraj Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.